In this video, we're going to explore the most extreme part of northeastern Montana. All of these towns have experienced a 50% decline in population. We're going to see one of the most recent ghost towns in the state and a town that was once moved from North Dakota. Here is a map of the area we will cover. So let's begin. Our first stop is Opheim, Montana. The town's population peaked at 457 people in 1960. It grew rapidly in the 50s due to the nearby Air Force Station. It's a quiet agriculture community facing economic decline. It's got a few abandoned buildings and a historic feel. It does still have a post office and a school. The town has a strong Norwegian-American heritage. The town was established in 1911. It celebrated its centennial in 2011. We're just a few miles away from the Canadian border. The town was a stop on the Great Northern Railway's expansion into the area. It served the region for decades, but the railway was abandoned in the 90s. At one point, the town had a handful of grain elevators. In 1951, a surveillance radar site was built just west of town. It was abandoned in 1979. This is all that's left of the place, and it was so windy, my drone couldn't make it very far, so this is all you can see. At one point, it had 135 Air Force personnel. Our next stop is Scobey, Montana. It's the county seat of Daniels County, about 14 miles south of the Canadian border. It sits in prime wheat and cattle country. It remains one of the largest towns in the area. The peak population was 1,726 in 1960. The Daniels County Courthouse was once One-Eyed Molly's, a hotel or house of pleasure. Now it's on the National Register of Historic Places. In the 1910s, there was a homestead boom in the area. It was reportedly the world's largest primary shipping point for grain at one point. The Great Northern Railroad was crucial to Scobey's founding and growth. Unlike a lot of the other towns in the area, Scobey is still thriving. There's a lot of businesses and services. Half the people who live in southern Saskatchewan have been to Plentywood, as it has a very popular border crossing nearby. The rail line in the area has been out of service for about 20 to 30 years. Our next stop is Flaxville, Montana. It's a small town in Daniel County, a classic northeast Montana prairie town with wide open skies. It's declining but resilient. There are still a few businesses in operation, and it's also home to 4 wooden grain elevators. There's not very many of these rows anymore. The population here is only 63. In 1930, 515 people lived here. The town has a strong agricultural base. The town moved to its current site in 1913, and the post office opened in 1914. Most of the buildings on Main Street are now abandoned. This one used to be an antique store, it looks like. My favorite building is the post office. This building used to be the bank. And this building used to be the jailhouse. I can't imagine spending the night here in the middle of winter. Just north of town is Whitetail, Montana, one of the more recent ghost towns in the state. It boomed as a railroad town in the early 20th century. Only 9 people remain. At its peak in 1920, 500 people lived here. It's one of the smallest communities in Montana. The town was on the Sioux Line Railroad, and rail service stopped coming here 25 years ago. And then 15 years ago, the nearest border crossing closed. It was a pretty swift economic decline for this town. This school operated until 1974. For someone who may have lived here 35 years ago, the economic decline of this town was pretty fast. The theater is now privately owned and used as an event center sometimes. The building on the left was the bar. The building on the right used to be the post office. We're only about 8 miles to Canada. Whitetail was one of the more fascinating ghost towns I've ever been in all of Montana. This building is the Whitetail Jail. Our next stop is Redstone, Montana. It's a tiny town in Sheridan County. The population here is 13. This building is the former school. At its peak, it probably had 200 to 300 people living here 100 years ago. Students here attend school in Plentywood, and it had its own post office from 1903 until 2013. My favorite building was this former Westland Oil Company gas station. It does appear this grain elevator may be in the process of demolition. Our next stop is Plentywood. Plentywood has lost a third of its population in the past few decades. At its peak, 2,476 people lived here in 1980. It's the county seat of Sheridan County, and it's located near the Saskatchewan border. The movie theater in town is still in operation. It appears to be operated by the community. Plentywood is a full-service town. It's the economic hub for the area. The Outlaw Trail, named by Butch Cassidy, ran nearby through the Big Muddy Badlands. The gulches in Plentywood hid outlaws from the early 1900s. Oil exploration has provided economic boosts in recent decades alongside agriculture. Our family moved to northeast Montana in the 1980s because of the oil boom. We eventually ended up in Houston. The median home price is $168,000, which is actually up 8% over the past year. The railroad that travels east and west has been closed for decades. However, it still receives rail service from the south. Our next stop is Westby, Montana. It is also in Sheridan County, and it's right along the North Dakota border. The peak population here was 396 people in 1950. The town has a strong Danish and Scandinavian settler roots. It's a quiet agriculture community. What makes this town unique is that it was once in North Dakota. Danish settlers named it Westby or Westtown because it was the westernmost point in North Dakota at its founding. In 1913, the Sioux Line built a branch line 2 miles away, prompting residents to physically move the entire town across the border into Montana in 1914. It also helped that Montana had more permissive liquor laws back in those days. There was a border survey dispute in the 1960s that briefly had maps showing the town back in North Dakota. However, it was resolved in Montana's favor. The town does still have some rail traffic, but traffic west of town has not seen any traffic in decades. This town is so remote, I would call it the last town in Montana. And finally, we're going to visit Raymond, Montana. Less than 10 people live here now. At its peak 100 years ago, 200 to 300 people likely lived here. This is the reason why I came here. This is an abandoned bar that was built in a barn. The Midway Tavern. There really isn't much left of this town. The community hall still does seem to be in use. And I'm 54 years old, so back in my day, this was the kind of playground we used to play at. It was just fascinating to see this playground just sitting here, just like it was in the 70s. It's not in very good shape anymore. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comment section below.